For days, Niren steeled himself against any emotions that lingered from Fea's visits, determined not to let his captor affect him any longer. He was a prisoner, he reminded himself, nothing more. But fate had a different plan, as he'd soon discover. One night, as Niren lay in bed, he heard soft footsteps outside his door. He prepared himself, bracing for another tense encounter, but when the door opened, it was Cheo who slipped into the room, his face pale and his eyes filled with panic. "Niren," Cheo whispered urgently, "I think something big is going down. I overheard the Nom talking to Feu about making a move. A dangerous one." Niren sat up, instantly alert. "What kind of move?" Cheo shook his head, his face pale. "I don't know everything, but there's a lot of tension between Fei's gang and a rival one. I think the Nom is pressuring him to take action." The idea of Feo risking his life in a gang war sent a chill through Niren, much to his frustration. After everything Feo had done, he shouldn't care what happened to him, yet the thought of something happening to Feo left a hollow ache in his chest. "Cheo," Niren said, keeping his voice steady, "why are you telling me this?" Cheo hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "I don't want anything to happen to you, Niren. And I don't want to see Feo get lost in this life, either." He paused, and Niren could see the fear and worry etched across his face. Feo has been lost in this world for so long, but he's not all bad. He needs someone who can pull him out. Niren felt a pang of sympathy for Cheo, but he shook his head. "I can't be that person, Cheo. He's the reason I'm here, and he's never going to change." Cheo sighed, but he didn't argue. "Just please stay safe. Promise me you won't try anything risky." Niren nodded, his resolve firm. He couldn't afford to get tangled up in Fea's dangerous world any more than he already was. But as Cheo slipped back out of the room, Niren couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time he'd be pulled into Fea's orbit. In the following days, the mansion seemed to shift with an undercurrent of tension, the kind of pressure that lingered in the air before a storm. Niren tried to stay out of the way, focusing on keeping his head down and waiting for an opportunity to escape. But despite his best efforts, he couldn't avoid crossing paths with Feu. One evening, as he was carrying a tray of documents, he rounded a corner and nearly collided with Feu. They both froze, the tension from their last conversation hanging heavy between them. Feu's gaze softened, a brief flicker of regret crossing his face before he quickly masked it. "You should stay away from the main floors. Things are tense." Niren raised an eyebrow, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "Maybe you should let me go then. That would solve the problem." Fei's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he looked away. "You know it's not that simple. Is anything simple with you?" Niren muttered, exasperated. But his heart betrayed him, aching at the sight of the conflict in Feu's eyes. He wished he could hate him without reservations, wished he didn't feel this confusing mixture of anger, sympathy, and something else entirely. Feu took a deep breath, as though weighing his next words. "I know this isn't fair to you, but some things are beyond my control." Niren couldn't hold back his frustration. "Maybe you should stop controlling everything, Feu. Maybe you should let yourself feel something for once." The words hung between them, raw and exposed. Feu looked at him, his gaze softening in a way that made Niren's heart skip a beat. But just as quickly, the wall came back up and Feu's expression hardened. "Feelings make you weak, Niren. In my world, that's a luxury I can't afford." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Niren alone in the corridor, feeling both hurt and strangely hopeful. That night, as he lay in bed, Niren couldn't sleep. The intensity of his encounter with Feu lingered, a knot of emotions he couldn't unravel. Despite everything Feu had done, he felt a pull toward him, an inexplicable desire to understand the man behind the ruthless facade. But just as he began to drift into an uneasy sleep, he heard the sound of voices outside his door. He crept closer, recognizing Thanom's low, authoritative tone. Peeking through a crack, he caught sight of the Nom speaking to a figure cloaked in darkness, his words hushed but filled with a sense of urgency. "We can't afford any more delays," the Nom was saying. "If Fea hesitates, It could all fall apart. He needs to commit to this. The figure nodded before slipping away, disappearing into the shadows. Niren's heart pounded as he retreated back into his room, feeling the weight of the revelation. Something big was indeed brewing, and it involved the Nom pressuring Feo to take action. Whatever it was, he knew it could only mean more danger. In the morning, Niren found himself facing Cheo once again, this time in the small garden behind the mansion. Cheo's usually bright demeanor was clouded with worry, his gaze darting nervously toward the main house. "Something's going on, isn't it?" Niren asked quietly. Cheo nodded, his face pale. "Thanom's planning something dangerous, and he's pushing Feo to go through with it. I try to talk to Feo, but he's so closed off, so determined to keep everything under his control." Niren hesitated, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. Despite his best efforts, he found himself caring for Feo, for the man hidden beneath the cold exterior. He didn't understand why, but he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. "I don't know why I care," he muttered, almost to himself. "After everything he's done." Cheo looked at him with understanding. "Because you see the part of him that's still human, Niren. The part that he tries so hard to bury." Niren took a deep breath, steeling himself. Then maybe it's time he learns that control doesn't have to mean shutting everyone out. Maybe it's time he sees that he doesn't have to do this alone. Cheo's face brightened with hope, and he reached out, squeezing Niren's shoulder. "Be careful, Niren. Feo isn't used to people standing up to him or caring for him." As Niren made his way back toward the mansion, he felt a surge of determination. He couldn't deny the pull he felt toward Feo, nor could he ignore the darkness threatening to consume him. He was stepping into a world he barely understood, a world of shadows and secrets, but he was ready. And as he crossed the threshold back into the mansion, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to leave Feo's side until he broke through the walls around his heart, no matter the risks.